Hi, my name is Karen Rodriguez, and I'm from Group 110, and today I'm going to talk to you about the Chapter 4, Ecosystem and Communities, that include the climate, the niches and community interactions, biomes, and the aquatic ecosystem. So here we go.
First, I'm going to talk about the climate and the difference between climate and weather. Weather is the day-to-day condition of Earth's atmosphere, and climate refers to average conditions over long periods. A region's climate is defined by year-after-year patterns of temperature and precipitation. Environmental conditions can vary over small distances, creating microclimates. Global climate is shaped by many factors including solar energy trapped in the biosphere, latitude, and the transport of heat by winds and ocean currents. Now I'm going to talk about the greenhouse effect. If greenhouse concentration rise, they trap more heat so air warms. If the concentration fall, more heat escapes and air cools. The unequal distribution of heat across the globe creates wind and ocean currents which transport heat and moisture. Winds transport heat from regions of rising warmer air to regions of sinking cooler air. These ocean currents transport enormous water is pushed by the winds. These ocean currents transport enormous amount of heat. Cool surface currents cool that passes the air between them. In this way, surface currents affect the weather and climate of nearby land masses. Now I'm going to talk about a niche. What is a niche? It is the range of physical and biological conditions in which a species lives in the way the species obtains what it needs to survive and reproduce. The term resource can refer to any necessity of life such as water, nutrients, light, food, or space. These species need a tolerance, that is the ability to survive and reproduce under a range of environmental circumstances, and they live in a habitat. The competitive exclusion principle states that no two species can occupy exactly the same niche in exactly the same habitat at exactly the same time. By causing species to divide resources, competition helps determine the number and kinds of species in a community and the niche each species occupies. The difference between predation and herbivory is that predation are the predators can affect the size of prey population in a community and determine the place prey can live and feed. And is when an animal captures and feeds on another animal. And herbivory is when an animal feeds on producers. The herbivores can affect both the size and distribution of plant population in a community and determine the place that certain plants can survive and grow. The occasion species are the species that sometimes change in the population of a single species. A symbiosis is any relationship in which two species live closely together. Biologists recognize three main classes of symbiotic relationship in nature. Mutualism, that is when the species in both sides are benefit, and then we have parasitism, that is a relationship in which one organism lives inside or another organism and harm it. And finally, we have commensalism. This relationship in which one organism benefits and the other is neither help or harm. Now I'm going to talk about the biomes. The biomes are described in terms of abiotic factors like climate and soil type and biotic factors like plant and animal life. We have 10 classification of biomes: tropical rainforest, tropical dry forest, tropical grassland, savanna, shrubland, desert, temperate grassland, temperate woodland and shrubland, temperate forest, northwestern coniferous forest, boreal forest or also called taiga, tundra. And finally, we have the aquatic ecosystem. Photic zone is when the sunlit region near the surface in which photosynthesis can occur, and the aphotic zone is below the photic zone and is dark, and photosynthesis cannot occur. These organisms that are the benthos are organisms that live on or in rocks and sediments on the bottom of lakes, streams, and oceans. Aquatic habitats like terrestrial habitats are warmer near the equator and colder near the poles. Freshwater ecosystems can divide into three main categories: rivers and streams, lakes and ponds, and freshwater wetland. Plankton is a general term that includes both phytoplankton and zooplankton. Water typically flows in and out of lakes and ponds. A wetland is an ecosystem in which water either covers the soil or is represented at or near the surface of at least part of the year. An estuary is a special kind of wetland formed where a river meets the sea. Estuaries serve as a spawning and nursery ground for many ecologically and commercially important fish and shellfish. Species including bluefish, striped bass, shrimp, and crabs. Then we have the marine ecosystem. Ecologists typically divide the ocean into zones based on depth and distance from shore. The first division is the inertial zone. This is when the organisms in the interior zone are submerged in seawater at high tide and exposed to air and sunlight. Then we have the coastal ocean. The coastal ocean extends from the low tide mark to the outer edge of the continental shelf. And finally, the open ocean. That is the begins of the edge of the continental shelf and extends outward. In the open ocean, we have the photic zone and the aphotic zone. So that's the end, and thank you for your attention.
My conclusion is that I learned more about the interaction between the organism, the classification of the biomes, the relationships that they have, the aquatic ecosystem, and the organisms that include. So thank you for your attention and have a nice day.